The smell of fried chicken and melted cheese hung thick in the air as Mia sat in her car, the fast food bags crinkling under her fingers. The feast she had ordered was massive. Double burgers dripping with sauce, a bucket of golden fries, a milkshake thick enough to chew. She told herself this was the last time, as she always did. Starting tomorrow, she'd eat clean, hit the gym, and stop using food to fill the aching void inside her. But tonight was her final goodbye to indulgence. She parked at her usual spot, an abandoned lot with cracked pavement and flickering streetlights. As she unwrapped her first burger, something felt different. The air grew heavy, almost sticky, and the light from the street lamps seemed to dim. The first bite was ecstasy, a flood of salt, fat, and sugar that hit her brain like fireworks. But then, she felt it. A shift. A ripple beneath her skin. She ignored it at first, brushing it off as guilt-induced nausea. But as she devoured the fries, the sensation grew. It was as if the food wasn't just sitting in her stomach, it was spreading, crawling through her veins, embedding itself in her very being. Her hands trembled as she reached for the milkshake, but she couldn't stop. The urge to consume was overwhelming, primal. The first sign that something was truly wrong came with the chicken nuggets. As she bit into one, she swore she heard a faint scream, not from outside but from the nugget itself. Startled, she dropped it, staring at the crispy morsel. It twitched. She blinked, convinced she was hallucinating. The nugget didn't move again, but a chilling thought crept into her mind. Did it just beg for mercy? Panic set in, but so did hunger. A gnawing, insatiable hunger that made her mouth water and her stomach growl with feral intensity. Mia tried to resist, but her hands moved on their own, shoveling fries and nuggets into her mouth as tears streamed down her face. "Please stop!" As the last fry disappeared into her mouth, the transformation began with horrifying violence. Her skin bubbled and stretched, veins bulging grotesquely as if something massive writhed just beneath the surface. Her stomach ballooned outward, the flesh splitting in jagged tears that oozed a thick, yellowish grease. Her limbs twisted unnaturally, joints snapping loudly as her body contorted into an alien form. She clawed desperately at her throat, nails ripping into her skin, but nothing came out. No relief, no scream, only the rancid stench of decay rising from within. Her eyes darted to the rearview mirror, and what stared back wasn't a reflection but a grotesque parody of her face, bloated, oozing with deep black hollows where her eyes should have been, and a gaping maw that pulsed with glistening, jagged teeth, dripping in the remnants of her own flesh. She was no longer Mia. Her face had twisted into a grotesque mask, her eyes blackened and sunken, her lips swollen and glistening with grease. Her skin shimmered unnaturally as if coated in oil. Worst of all, her mouth had widened into an unholy gash, lined with rows of jagged teeth. The food in her stomach churned violently, and a voice, a collective guttural voice, spoke from within her. "You fed us. Now we feed." Before she could process the horror, her body lurched forward. She wasn't in control anymore. Her hands gripped the steering wheel as her foot slammed on the gas. The car sped down the empty street, her monstrous face illuminated in the mirror by the eerie glow of the dashboard. Mia, or whatever she had become, arrived at a 24-hour diner. She stumbled out of the car, her bloated frame lumbering awkwardly. The smell of frying bacon wafted through the air, and the hunger surged anew. She burst through the diner's doors, patrons turning to stare at the strange, greasy figure. "Feed us, or we feed on you." Mia lunged at the nearest table, her monstrous hands grabbing a plate of pancakes. She devoured them in seconds, syrup and crumbs spraying everywhere. The diners screamed, some fleeing, others frozen in shock. But the food wasn't enough. The hunger wasn't satisfied. She turned to the people. Her jagged teeth didn't just sink into flesh, they shredded it. Muscle fibers tore apart like wet paper as her maw clamped down, pulling sinew and ligaments free with sickening slurping sounds. Blood erupted in thick arterial sprays, painting the walls in gruesome crimson streaks. Her claw-like hands ripped at her victims with feral intensity, disemboweling them in one horrific motion. Guts spilled onto the linoleum floor, steaming and glistening under the harsh diner lights. Bone cracked like dry twigs as she bit down harder, chewing with a grotesque, wet crunch that sent chunks of tissue flying. The voices in her stomach roared with laughter, a hellish symphony of malice that echoed through the carnage. By the time the police arrived, the diner was a scene of pure annihilation. The air was thick with the metallic stench of blood and the rotting odor of ruptured organs. Mia, or what remained of her, sat in the center of the massacre, her body swollen and grotesque, her bloated form glistening with grease and gore. Blood pooled around her, mingling with the remnants of flesh, shattered bones and tangled entrails that surrounded her like an unholy offering. Her glossy, food-slicked exterior pulsated rhythmically, as though something alive and ravenous still writhed beneath her skin, waiting to claim more. The officers raised their weapons, shouting for her to surrender. She smiled, if you could call that hideous grin a smile, and spoke for the first time since the transformation. Maya, you can't stop the hunger. The police didn't approach immediately. Their guns were drawn, but their faces were masks of horror. Something wasn't right. Mia, or the creature she had become, wasn't just sitting in the carnage, she was humming. A low, chilling tune that made the officer's skin crawl. As one officer stepped closer, her bloated form twitched. Her head jerked unnaturally to the side, her lips curling into a smile far too wide for any human face. "You think this ends with me?" The officer hesitated, but his radio crackled. "HQ to all units. Reports are coming in. Similar incidents at 3 other locations. No, make that 7. Mia let out a wet, gurgling laugh. Her body convulsed, shifting grotesquely, as if something inside her was trying to escape. It's already too late. Before the officer could react, her body exploded, not in blood and gore, but in a shower of greasy black mist that rushed toward him and his team. He screamed as it seeped into his eyes, mouth, and lungs. His body went rigid, his veins bulging with dark, pulsating tendrils. His gun dropped to the floor. "We don't die, we multiply." The officer turned to his comrades, his eyes now pits of black void, his grin stretching unnaturally wide. Behind him, the greasy mist slithered toward the others and the sound of distant screams filled the air. The diner was just the beginning.
This is important. People who take selfies on their iPhones all day always end up. Before you go any further, fill in the blank. Take a moment. Pause this. Think, and leave your guess in the comments. Got it? Okay, let's continue. Amara wasn't vain, at least that's what she told herself. But her camera roll told a different story. Hundreds, maybe thousands of selfies stared back at her, each a desperate attempt to capture perfection, the perfect angle, the perfect lighting, the perfect her. It was harmless, right? Everyone did it. Selfies were just a way of documenting her life, a way to connect with her friends on Instagram and TikTok. New day, new me. She'd caption her photos, throwing in a few hashtags and waiting for the dopamine rush of likes and comments. One evening, after spending an hour trying to get the right shot in the golden light of her bedroom, Amara noticed something strange. She zoomed in on the latest selfie, admiring the way her hair caught the sunlight. But something was off. Her face wasn't there. The background was perfect. The soft glow of her fairy lights, the unmade bed in the corner, even the shadow of her phone in her outstretched hand. But where her face should have been, there was nothing. Just an empty blur, as if someone had smeared her features with a digital eraser. She frowned, scrolling back through her photos. The one before it was fine. So was the one before that. Maybe it was a glitch. Phones glitched all the time, didn't they? Shrugging it off, she deleted the photo and tried again. She tilted her head, adjusted her smile, and snapped another picture. When she looked at it, her face was gone again. Come on, she muttered, shaking her phone as if that would help. She switched to the front-facing camera and stared at herself, moving her head side to side. Her reflection seemed normal. She snapped another photo. Gone. Her stomach churned as she scrolled through her gallery again. A chill ran down her spine. It wasn't just the new photos. Randomly, sporadically, throughout her collection of selfies, her face was missing. Sometimes it was blurred. Other times it was just empty, like a void where her features should have been. Amara, are you okay? Yeah, just phone's acting weird. Again? You should get that checked. Sophie disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Amara alone with her thoughts. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at her phone, scrolling through her photos again and again. The missing faces were like black holes, drawing her deeper into paranoia. She posted a few of the photos online, hoping someone could explain what was happening. Weird glitch or something else? Anyone seen this before? The comments poured in quickly. Commenter 1, creepy as fuck. Commenter 2, looks like some kind of spirit thing. Commenter 3, maybe it's a sign to stop taking so many selfies, lol. She rolled her eyes at that last one, but something about it stung. Was she taking too many selfies? Did that even matter? Over the next few days, the phenomenon got worse. It wasn't just her selfies anymore. She started noticing her absence in group photos too. A photo from a party the weekend before showed Sophie and a few friends laughing, drinks in hand. Amara should have been in the middle, but there was only an empty space where she had been. What the hell is happening to me? She whispered to herself. Desperate for answers, she turned to the internet. She found threads about camera glitches, articles about cursed photos, even forums where people claimed to have experienced similar things. One post caught her eye. Missing from my own pictures. What does it mean? The poster described a situation eerily similar to hers. Selfies where their face was missing, photos where their presence seemed erased. The post had only one reply. It starts with the photos, but it's not just about the pictures. It's about who you are. The more you try to capture yourself, the more you lose yourself. Stop before it's too late. Amara sat back, staring at the screen. Lose herself? What did that even mean? She felt a strange pull to take another selfie, to prove that she was still there. She picked up her phone and opened the camera app. Amara, stop. What? You've been acting weird. Are you okay? I'm fine. But her voice wavered. You've been talking to yourself. And the other day, when we took that picture with Jen, you weren't in it. I thought it was a joke, but now... She trailed off, her face pale. You saw that? Yeah, and you look different. Amara ran to the mirror. Her reflection stared back, but it wasn't quite right. Her features were softer, less distinct, as if she were fading. Panic clawed at her chest. She grabbed her phone and opened the gallery. One by one, her photos vanished before her eyes, replaced by empty spaces or corrupted files. A message appeared on her screen. You don't need these, what the fuck? She dropped the phone. The screen flickered, and another message appeared. You're losing yourself because you're obsessed with capturing yourself. Stop looking for validation in reflections. Stop trying to prove you exist. Who's doing this? She screamed. No response. That night, she deleted her social media accounts. She threw her phone in a drawer and swore off selfies. Days turned into weeks, and she started to feel normal again. But something still lingered, a nagging doubt in the back of her mind. One day, Sophie asked her to take a group photo. Amara hesitated but agreed, using Sophie's phone instead of her own. When she looked at the picture, everyone was there, except her. The phone buzzed in Sophie's hand. A message appeared, but it wasn't from anyone they knew. Message: this is important. People who take selfies all day always end up missing. From themselves. Amara looked at Sophie, who stared back in horror. And for the first time, Amara realized she couldn't feel her heartbeat. This is important. People who swipe on their iPhones all day always end up... Can you fill in the blanks? What do you think happens? Write your guess in the comments. Julia had no idea how it started. One day everything was fine, normal even. She worked, texted friends, scrolled social media before bed. It was mindless and comforting. The kind of habit you don't think about because everyone does it. But habits have a way of mutating when you're not paying attention. One night, Julia lay in bed with her phone, its faint glow painting her face in pale blue light. She wasn't even looking at anything important. A cooking video, a meme, another endless scroll of strangers' lives. And then it happened. The video that stopped her cold. A crowded subway car, ordinary enough, but there in the background, blurred but unmistakable. It was her. She could see herself sitting, wearing the coat she always wore to work, her earbuds tucked in as she stared at her own phone. She replayed the clip twice, 3 times, searching for an explanation. She hadn't filmed herself, and no one she knew had been on that train. The logical part of her brain offered excuses. Maybe it was a coincidence, someone who just looked like her. But the pit in her stomach told her otherwise. The moment passed and Julia swiped again, hoping to distract herself, but sleep wouldn't come. For days, she tried to forget. She told herself it didn't matter, but the next time she opened her phone late at night, her feed had changed. There were photos of places she hadn't been to in years, her old high school, a childhood park, even the house she grew up in, long sold to strangers. At first, she laughed nervously. Maybe the algorithm had figured her out, pieced together scraps of her digital history. It was eerie, sure, but explainable, wasn't it? But when a video appeared, a blurry clip of her as a child, running barefoot across her grandparents' yard, she felt the first crack in her reality. That tape didn't exist. It couldn't. Her grandparents had never filmed her, and she hadn't been to that house since they passed. She watched, wide-eyed, as the comments rolled in beneath the video. One in particular made her blood run cold. "We've missed you, Julia. Come back soon." She slammed her phone down, her chest heaving. "It's just a glitch," she whispered to herself in the darkness. But the darkness didn't answer back. The next few weeks blurred together. Julia stopped talking about what was happening. The one friend she mentioned it to had laughed it off, chalking it up to paranoia or too much screen time. "You're just overthinking," they said, scrolling their own phone as they spoke. But Julia couldn't ignore the growing feeling that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. The longer she spent on her phone, the more her world began to shift. Conversations at work became harder to follow, as if people were speaking through a layer of static. Faces blurred at the edges, and her memories began to fade. Small things at first. What she had eaten the night before, the name of a childhood pet. But the gaps grew larger. Every night she returned to her phone, unable to resist. It wasn't just a habit anymore. It was an obsession. One evening, while scrolling through her notifications, she noticed a live stream pop up. It wasn't from anyone she followed, but it was titled, "Look Outside." Her breath hitched. The stream showed a darkened street, one that looked eerily familiar. She recognized the cracked sidewalk, the flickering streetlight. It was her street. Her phone buzzed violently in her hand, the vibration almost painful. She stared at the screen as the camera panned up slowly, focusing on her own window. Panic clawed at her throat as she jumped from the bed and rushed to the window, her heart pounding in her chest. Outside, the street was empty, silent except for the faint hum of the streetlight. She turned back to her phone, but the live stream was gone, replaced by an ad for noise-canceling headphones. Her hands shook as she threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a dull thud but didn't break. Instead, it landed face up on the floor, the screen dimming to black. That night she dreamed of nothing but static. The next day, Julia didn't go to work. She called in sick, though she wasn't sick, at least not physically. She couldn't explain it, but something had shifted inside her. The world felt thinner, as if she could push through it with enough force. She tried to avoid her phone, leaving it on the dresser, but the compulsion was unbearable. By the afternoon, she gave in, picking it up and swiping through notifications. That's when she saw the video. It was short, just a few seconds long, but it was enough. The video showed her sitting on her bed, staring blankly at her phone exactly as she was now. The timestamp read, "Live." Her breath caught as the comments began pouring in. "She's almost ready. Keep swiping, Julia. We're waiting for you." She tried to shut the phone off, but the screen wouldn't respond. Her reflection stared back at her, distorted and wrong. The faint outline of something moved behind her reflection, just out of focus. She turned sharply, but her room was empty. That night was the last anyone saw of Julia. Her landlord found her apartment untouched, her belongings exactly where she had left them, except for her phone, which lay on the bed with the screen still glowing faintly. When her friends called, the line rang endlessly before going to voicemail. Weeks later, a new account appeared on TikTok. It posted videos of Julia's old life, her favorite cafes, the park where she used to walk, even her childhood home. The comments were filled with speculation, fans obsessed with solving the mystery of her disappearance. But some commenters noticed something else. The account's followers, the ones who seemed most engaged, had started disappearing too. If you're reading this, think about how much time you spend swiping. Think about what you're ignoring, what you're losing, what might be watching you in the reflection of your screen. Because people who swipe on their iPhones all day always end up, well, you decide. Fill in the blank. Maybe it's already happening to you. This is important. People who swipe on their iPhones all day always end up. Take a moment. Pause. Fill in the blanks in the comments before you read further. What do you think happens? Write your guess, then keep reading. Because the truth might be more unsettling than you expect. Eli didn't consider himself lonely, at least not in the way people talk about it. Sure, he lived alone, ate alone, spent most nights scrolling through Tinder while the sound of the TV filled the silence. But everyone did that, right? Swiping was second nature. Swipe left, no connection. Swipe right, the faint spark of possibility. Swipe left, swipe right, swipe, swipe, swipe. The thing about dating apps, Eli thought, was that it wasn't just about finding someone. It was about distraction. Each face was a little burst of dopamine, a fleeting moment of intrigue. He wasn't looking for love, he was killing time. Until one night the faces started to look off. At first it was subtle. A woman with impossibly symmetrical features, her smile sharp, too precise. A man whose eyes seemed to glow faintly, even in a poorly lit selfie. Eli laughed it off. Filters, Photoshop, AI enhancements, it wasn't unusual. But then there was her. Her profile was simple, no name, just an emoji of an eye as her username. No bio, just a single photo. She was stunning, but not in a conventional way. Her face had an uncanny quality, like a dream half-remembered. Something about her eyes, dark, infinite, made Eli pause. He swiped right. The match was instant. His heart gave a little jolt. A perfect match? That never happened. Before he could think too much about it, a message appeared. "Hi Eli, I've been waiting for you." His fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Do I know you?" he typed. Her reply came fast. "Better than you think." Eli stared at the screen, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. He debated unmatching, but curiosity won. What's that supposed to mean? You swipe every night because you're lonely. You're not looking for love. You're looking for escape. A chill ran through him. "How do you know that?" "I know everything about you. Your favorite coffee order is a caramel macchiato. You always order extra napkins, even though you don't need them. You keep a box of letters from your ex in your closet, but you haven't read them in years. Sometimes you wonder if anyone would notice if you disappeared." Eli's throat went dry. His first instinct was to laugh it off as a prank, but how could someone know these things? The box of letters was buried under old clothes, untouched since his last breakup. And that thought, about disappearing, was something he'd never voiced aloud. "Who are you?" he typed, his hands shaking. "I'm someone who's been watching, someone who knows what you've been searching for." He tried to close the app, but his phone froze. The screen flickered, the brightness dimming and flaring. When the app reopened on its own, her message was still there, waiting. Is this some kind of joke, he typed, his fear now tinged with anger. No joke, Eli. You spend your nights swiping through strangers, hoping one will fill the void. But what if the void isn't meant to be filled? The messages didn't feel like they were coming from a person. There was no hesitation, no typing indicator. It was as though the responses were preloaded, waiting for him. You're not real, he typed. You're just some bot or hacker. What is real, Eli? Am I less real than the strangers you swipe left on without a second thought? Or am I more real because I know you better than they ever could? The photo on her profile began to change. The once beautiful face morphed, her features shifting subtly into his. Eli's own face stared back at him, but it wasn't quite right. The eyes were darker, deeper, as if they saw straight through him. What do you want? He typed, panic settling in his chest like a stone. I want to show you the truth. The screen glitched again and his Tinder profile appeared, but it wasn't his usual bio. Instead it read, Eli, 29, searching for meaning in a sea of faces. Will anyone notice when I'm gone? Below it were dozens of matches, all with the same profile picture, his own distorted face. He clicked on one, and the chat history was filled with messages he didn't remember sending. Help me. Who am I? Why won't anyone answer? He dropped his phone, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. When he picked up the phone again, a final message awaited him. This is important, Eli. People who swipe on their iPhones all day always end up swiping back. The screen went black, his reflection staring back at him. But the reflection didn't move when he did. It smiled. Eli sat in the suffocating silence, his mind racing as he stared at the black screen of his phone. His reflection still hadn't moved. It lingered, its smile growing sharper, its eyes glinting like two obsidian mirrors. Trembling, he placed the phone face down on the table, unable to bear looking at it any longer. But just as he exhaled, the screen lit up again on its own, flooding the room with a cold, eerie glow. The phone began vibrating, but it wasn't a call. It was a notification. A video message had been sent to him by himself. The sender's profile photo was his own face, wearing that same unnerving, unnatural smile. Eli didn't want to open it. Every instinct screamed to throw the phone across the room, to run, but his fingers betrayed him, drawn as if by an unseen force. The video began to play. It showed him sitting in his apartment, just as he was now, except there was something different about the other Eli on the screen. His movements were mechanical, his expression flat, like a puppet on strings. In the video, Eli looked directly into the camera. Other Eli, you think this ends here, don't you? You think this is some cosmic prank, a glitch in the app, maybe even your own mind unraveling, but it's none of those things. This is the moment you wake up. Eli, wake up? The other Eli leaned closer to the camera, his distorted face filling the screen. Other Eli, do you even remember the last time you left this apartment? The last time you spoke to someone face to face? You've been swiping for so long you've forgotten what's real. That's the thing about swiping. It doesn't just take your time, it takes you. Eli, what are you talking about? The video glitched, static crackling over the screen. When it cleared, Eli's heart dropped. The video now showed a dimly lit room, unfamiliar but unsettlingly sterile, like the corner of an abandoned hospital. In the center of the room was a chair, and in that chair sat him. His arms were strapped down, electrodes attached to his temples, his head lolled to the side as though he were asleep, or worse. The video panned closer to his unconscious body. A voice, calm and clinical, spoke off camera. Voice, OS. Subject 842 has been in simulation for approximately 5 years, 7 months, and 12 days. Cognitive decline appears to have stabilized, though the subject remains unaware of the simulation's false nature. proceeding with reintegration test. Eli, no, this isn't real. This can't be real. The video cut again, and now the perspective had shifted back to his apartment, or what he thought was his apartment. But something was wrong. The edges of the room seemed to flicker, dissolving into static and reforming in rapid, disorienting pulses. His reflection in the phone screen wasn't just smiling anymore. It was watching. Eli, who are you? What do you want from me? The phone buzzed in response, a new message appearing. Phone screen. It's not about what I want, it's about what you agreed to. Eli, what I agreed to? I didn't agree to anything. Another message appeared. Phone screen. Are you sure? The walls of his apartment began to blur, the textures peeling away like the skin of a fruit. Beyond them was nothing but a vast expanse of black, speckled with faint digital grids. The floor beneath him shifted, the sensation like standing on the edge of a great void. He clawed at the furniture, at the walls, but everything he touched crumbled into pixels and static. And then he remembered. The memory hit him like a lightning bolt. A man in a white coat, smiling as he signed a waiver. Man in white coat. You'll hardly notice it. A perfect simulation. All the connection you could ever want. No more pain, no more loss. Just endless possibilities. Eli, no, this isn't happening. This isn't real. His reflection in the phone began laughing, the sound echoing in the vast emptiness that had once been his home. Reflection. You wanted connection, Eli. Isn't that what this was all about? Well, congratulations, you got it. The simulation is perfect. It feeds off your desires, your fears, your thoughts. Every face you swiped, every match you ignored, it was all you. The walls dissolved completely, leaving him suspended in the black void. The phone in his hand was the only thing left. Its screen displayed a single message. Phone screen. This is important. People who swipe on their iPhones all day always end up... Eli. End up where? The reply came instantly. Phone screen, right back where they started. The screen flickered one last time, and suddenly Eli was sitting in his apartment again. Everything was back to normal. The walls, the furniture, the hum of the TV in the background. His phone buzzed in his hand. It was Tinder, a new match. Without thinking, Eli opened the app. The profile picture was his own face, smiling back at him. Phone screen. Hi, Eli. Let's try this again.